Hello, and welcome to this lecture, Autodesk Maya, Working in Visual Effects. Working in VFX is both a blessing and a curse. It's an awesome job that can be really enjoyable, but it can also be a nightmare. A lot of companies do not seem to be run by people that want to pay the staff uh, as well as deserved anyway, or sadly, they want to do the minimum on salaries and benefits, which has in a lot of areas of our industry sadly led to a race to the bottom. I wish that when I was at university, we were told on how to bid for jobs and what we should be charging for a day rate, or how we should put a contract in place. Sadly, though, none of this was taught. I meet so many people starting out charging rates that are, after tax and their costs, often working out to lower the minimum wage. And like this is, I'm obviously British, English. Minimum wage here, I think, is around about £11 in 2023. Wait, give me 1 second and let me Google that. Okay, minimum wage is £10.42, which is not brilliant still. That's only if you're over 23. I think it then goes down. If you're under 18, you can be paid under, or you can be paid over around about £5. Oof, harsh. Okay. Luckily, I have some amazing friends that help me get contracts into place. I found using an online accountant very useful and cost effective to sort out my accountancy needs. And I worked out the minimum I could charge when first contracting to afford my bills and have a rainy day fund. I do know I'm a lot luckier than a lot of riggers. I started off, first year I did one job, which was just, I was taken on a small company just to go and work and to get one animation done out for one of their clients. And then after 3 months, when that job finished, I was let go, which I was only on contract. That's fair enough. I was hoping it would lead to more, but yeah. Then I had 9 months. I went to work on reception in a doctor's surgery while I kept sending off resumes, doing tutorials, and working. And after 9 months, I was lucky enough to be put forward for a running job at Frame Store. So it was very lucky because, again, I knew this person was working in production. She just got a job there working in Frame Store, so I got a job working as a runner there. And there were about 10 runners, all of whom wanted to be animators, and I was the only one who knew about rigging and wanted to go into rigging. So I was very lucky that after, I think, about a month and a half, I was able to step up when they had a big job come in. So I understand how lucky I am, but literally it's not that easy for everyone. And that is probably why I've written this whole lecture, because I think that this is going to be information that is not talked about enough. Okay, people aren't told enough how and why they should be working for companies and how they should deal with them. Because I'm sorry, a lot of the companies in our industry are very difficult to work with, and they do not respect how hard artists work, which is kind of what my goal in the future would be. My long-term goal in the future would be to one day is to start an animation company where the artists all own part of the company. I think that I work with amazing artists, and I have always been amazed by how hard everyone works. But it depresses me that most of these people are on contract, and then they have to go and then look for jobs for long periods of time, which is obviously not sustainable. Whereas if the artists own the company, there could be a bit more sustainability. There could be a bit more of a partnership kind of going on where everyone who owned the company owned the profits as well. So obviously some would have to be held back for rainy day fund within the company, but that the company should be run for the best of its staff. It shouldn't be run for the best of the directors. It shouldn't be run for the best of the owner. There are so many companies in London where literally I remember in one company being told by 2 animators who had been there for 3 years, they hadn't had a pay rise in 3 years. They were told that there wasn't any money in the company for their pay rises. And because I was being paid a good day rate there. I think I was on about, again, not to brag, this is just to say I was on a good day rate. I was on over £300 a day just working there as a day rate. And so I went on to Companies House, which is the UK's business kind of repository of information about companies. I looked up the company we were at, and the company was essentially owned by the one director, okay, who had then also had a subsidiary company, which he paid out all profits to, which was part owned by him and his wife, which he had paid out the year before over 600, I think it was over £500,000 to him and his wife. And that is after all of his costs and his salary from the initial company. So The fact that he couldn't give those lovely animators, this is only a small team. That company only had maybe 40 people most on staff. And I think even then, probably that was more than that were on permanent. I think most of those are probably contracts. But those poor guys, again, minimum, just over minimum wage, and they have not been given a raise in 3 years. They are building that company for that horrible boss to essentially go and take hundreds of thousands of pounds in profit, but not share it out. And that is kind of what I mean when I say it's a love-hate relationship with our industry. But that will only get better once we all maybe start talking about how should we work going forward and how will we. So let's go on to that right now. So if you are new to visual effects, remember saying no to a low-paying job is better than you losing money. The company will not be making a loss. They will only be making higher profits. And this will help empower all artists if we learn to say no to bad conditions. All right, I quite literally mean that, in that if you are being told by a company that they don't have the money to pay you more, then you have to say no. If they have underbid a job that will then cost you more of your time, then you have to say no, because this is that company's fault. And it is only by doing that that companies will learn they cannot just keep on undercutting other companies and bidding down to the bottom. Okay, like I said, it's a competition only, it's a race to the bottom. If everyone undercuts everyone else, that is all it is. And it's very sad, sadly. So here are some tips on how to best bid for rigging jobs and what to watch out for. So number 1, gather information. Before bidding on a job, make sure that you have all the necessary information about the project. Ask the client about the scope of the project, the timeline, the deliverables, the budget, and any other relevant details. This will help you determine whether this project is a good fit for your skills and experience, and whether the budget is reasonable for the amount of work required. Define the scope of work. Once you have all the information, define the scope of work for the rigging job. Break down the project into smaller tasks and estimate the time and effort required for each task. This will help you determine the total cost of the project and the amount you should charge. I tend to do this in a best case and worst case scenario. So I say, well, if somebody provides me with the perfect model, it's symmetrical, the mesh is easy for me to project to from the base mesh, so I have to do minimum time on waiting, I have to do everything. And then what about the worst case scenario? Let's say the mesh isn't mirrored. Let's say I can't project outwards. Let's say all the clothing is horrible and it needs to be done individually. I generally then add those 2 times together and divide by 2, because you're going to meet those clients in the middle somewhere at least. Okay, there's never going to be, it's very rarely a company where you've worked with all modelers or all animators where everyone knows it is perfect or what they do. So it's best to kind of, again, bid yourself on the safety point of view for this kind of stuff. Number 3, communicate clearly. Make sure you communicate clearly with the client about your bid. Explain your pricing and what is included in your bid. If there is any potential issue or issues or challenges with the project, make sure you bring them up with the client and discuss how they can be addressed or the extra time that might be needed to address the issues. This is another way of doing what we just talked about. You can also say, well, this is what I believe my best time will be for rigging your task or for rigging your character, your objects, your props. But this is also the worst case. This is how you can bridge the gap between those 2 points. If you send me a model that is X, that is symmetrical, if the clothing is all matched up with the topology below, if this, that, and the other, this will all help your client to then be more clear on what they ask for from their modelers, okay, and help you. Number 4. Protect your intellectual property. When working on a rigging project, make sure you protect your intellectual property. This includes any scripts, tools, techniques that you have prior to starting with that or on that project and with that company. And make sure that you have a clear agreement with the client about who owns your intellectual property, your current scripts and your new scripts, and make sure you are compensated appropriately for any work that is used beyond the scope of the project. That is the only reason my day rate is so high now. It's not because I'm better than I was maybe 5 years ago, possibly at waiting and all these other things, which are maybe a little bit better, but probably not measurably. Pretty much because all my scripts are better. I know that my scripting system is better than 99% of the people out there. And that means that I can then make better rigs, faster rigs, that I can update things in a much more timely manner than anyone else would, or make changes. Number 5, stay organized. Rigging projects can be complex and involve many different files and versions. Make sure that you stay organized and you keep track of all the files and versions involved in a project. Use a version control system or a file naming convention to make sure that you keep track of the changes and revisions. Document these changes somewhere obvious and logical. Number 6, be flexible. Rigging projects can often involve changes and revisions as the project progresses. Make sure that you are flexible and willing to make changes as necessary to meet the client's needs. However, make sure you communicate again this clearly about any additional costs or time required for the changes beyond the original scope of work. This should fall under your day rate. Okay, you should have maybe bid for the task of what you estimate this will be, but then also inform them of your day rate for additional requirements or challenges that you will have to take on. Number 7, protect yourself. Finally, make sure you protect yourself by having a clear contract or agreement with the client. You can make your own, and I will include my kind of boilerplate contract for your use. Okay, this is still relevant to the UK and can be quite easy to update to make relevant for any other country. Make sure that you have a clear payment schedule and that you are paid in a timely manner. Okay, I normally set myself on every month. Essentially, it's when everyone is paid. I would not, and I recommend you highly, do not wait till the end of a project to be paid. If you work for 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year, you're going to 1, run out of money, 2, struggle massively, and then if the project or if the company decides to fold or go under, you're out of all that money. So just make sure you at least pick monthly payments. Okay, so let's if not, I'd actually make sure extra charges are also in place to motivate your client to pay in a timely manner. I used to add 2% of the project cost, for example, per day. That payment was past the due date. Actually, I think it was 2% or a minimum payment of £40 a day. So you can imagine if you start wanting to pay, 30, 40 days late, 2, 3 months late, it starts adding up very quickly on top of the project cost for them. So make sure that you have a clear scope of work and that any changes to the scope are agreed upon in writing, in email, and you make sure you have a clear exit strategy in place in case the project does not go as planned. When I say in writing, I do mean in writing. If you've talked over the phone with someone, that's great. If it's recorded, if you own that recording and have that recording on your computer, because obviously if they record it, they're going to delete it if something goes wrong or if it is going to go against them in court. Make sure everything that you agree with a client is followed up with if after a meeting in an email and confirmed with them. Okay, that is a very dangerous point, that if you agree stuff verbally with a client and then they can then turn around at the end of a project and say, no, we didn't say that, because you have no proof. Again, it's never happened to me, but I have heard of it happening, sadly, quite a lot in our industry. So you have to be sure. And again, a few companies have actually said to me that they're a bit scared about the 2% or the minimum cost payment being added on past the due date if they're late, if they fail to pay me. But I've said to them, well, have you ever failed to pay anyone before? And they then say, oh, well, no, of course they all say no. And then I say, well, then that it isn't an issue because you're going to be paying me every month. So that's fine. There is literally of the 10 or 20 companies I've worked for in the last 13 years. Only one company has actually not paid me. And then, so after 3 months of them not paying me, I added up what they owed me, which was a good, it was quite a few £1,000s. But then obviously with the late fee, this accruing 2%, this compounding 2%, it added up very quickly. It started adding up that they owed me an extra £5,000 or £6,000 on top of what they already owed me. And I said to them after 3 months that I was giving them 1 day to make a payment into my account. If not, that a lawyer would be contacting them, and I gave them the details of the lawyer to contact. I was calling their bluff because I hadn't actually talked to that lawyer yet, because my friend worked in he was a corporate lawyer, but he wouldn't be able to obviously represent me unless he was through his company, which would have cost me a lot. But once threatening that company and showing them and highlighting those points in the contract and telling them what they were contractually obliged to pay me, it scared them into paying me straight away. Okay, this is how much that contract saved my gut. If they hadn't paid me, I would have been, out 6 months' pay. which that's quite a lot of money. Again, I was breaking my own rules there. I worked for the last few months because they paid me for the first 3 months so quickly. I was like, I didn't mind. I just thought, okay, well, they just said that they'd missed me on the 4th month. So they said, oh, I'm sorry, we missed you on that payment. We just completely missed you. We'll pay you on the next month double. We'll get that over to you. So, okay, yep, no problem. The 5th month, it was a case of, oh, I'm so sorry. We've done the same thing again. It is a mistake. And then by the end of the project, which was then at 6 months, it was, well, guys, where's my money? And they didn't pay me again. So it was merely a case of me panicking and saying, guys, I need my money. Okay, this is, you will hear about this. Sadly, there are lots of companies that do this. There was a company in Germany, 2013. Again, I won't name, but they took a lot of animators and an amazing artist over from London to set up to do a series. They made a lot of money on that series. The owner was driving around in his Ferrari, annoying quite a lot of the artists because they weren't being paid very well. And a lot of them, he then folded the company before the end, and they all lost months of work. Some of them literally had to ask their families to get them tickets to come back. And that, again, I remember hearing about that from one of my friends I'd worked with at Frame Store. It's sad when you hear that because obviously the owner of that company didn't care about any of those workers. The laws are there to protect him. He folded the company. And all those people essentially have to put in claims against an estate of which he is rinsed. There's no money left in that company. And they can take him to court privately, but who has the money to do that? That's the problem. So that is where a good contract will stop you getting to that point. Okay, you need to make sure that you're paid consistently. And I think, like I should have, after any months that you are not paid, you tell them you will not work until you are paid, because it could have quite easily gone the other way in that with the company I was working with. Luckily, they're a bit bigger, so it was a little bit less likely that they would just fold the company. But it was still likely that they could just refuse to pay me and then call my bluff, and I'd have to take them to court, of which quite obvious I would have won because they'd signed this contract. But again, it's quite risky. Okay, so we'll have a quick look through the contract as well. Okay, give me 1 minute. We'll load up that contract and we'll have a little look. This contract will be included with the downloads available within this lecture. And the first thing you'll see is that I've highlighted everything red that you need to put. So where it says your company name, that was Rig Store, all in black under with the underline. Terms of service. So terms of service is what we say again is kind of the UK equivalent to a company working for another company. My company is Rig Store, and I was working through that, or even sometimes just using that and then working for them. Or I was working for them as a contractor on the books. But this is the kind of contract that you should use. So this is the contract between. Okay, your company name, okay, your details, or if not, just your name, your address, okay, the laws which are regulated by which province that you're going to work with. Make sure that you get your information in as detailed as possible, and your clients, okay? That is very important that you get their company name and the company. Now, then make sure that the service is provided, that you are very clear about everything that you are doing through this, and you make sure that your times and rates are already agreed so that they're signing something they already expect. You've got calculations of fees and other charges and how you'll work, which I used to do on 15-minute increments. The invoices arrangement, the invoicing arrangements. So the invoicing arrangements is something that is also useful to have in there. And here we'll see that the amount for each late payment was £50, okay, or the corresponding amount of 2% over each day late, which obviously 2% doesn't sound that much, but if they owe you thousands and thousands of pounds, then that will add up quickly. Software rights and ownership. Make sure you own the rights, okay, and that is dictated as in here, that you will not be giving them the code that you have made or you use. Okay, termination of agreement, service provider maintenance. Okay, make sure you read through all of this and make sure it's written up, and that if you have someone in your network that's legal, get them to read through it, or make sure that you just try to get an example contract, okay, in that you can scan and check that this aligns with it within your country's laws. If you have any questions about this part of our visual effects world, then please feel free to reach out and I'll advise the best I can. But the main piece of advice I would give you is make sure you look after yourself. I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that will be very ready to manipulate and take advantage of people that do not take care of themselves. And this is why you need a contract. This is why you need to take care of yourself, because companies don't have your interests at heart. They have the bottom line at heart for them, which is profit. And profit for them might sometimes mean not paying a few artists. So you have to make sure that you are protected. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you on our next lecture.